ध्यायेत् शारदचन्द्रसुन्दरमुखम् ताम्रारविन्देक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्याङ्गकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणीश्वरं गुरुवरम् योगासनाध्यासितम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणीश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहमिति साक्षातात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जतव पवनचलनरोधात् आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्. Namo Ramana. In this Friday Atma Vichara session, we have been meditating on Bhagavan's Upadesham on the subject matter of Atma Vichara, self-enquiry, which has been compiled into a book with all the questions put to Bhagavan on self-enquiry and Bhagavan's answers to it between 1900 to 1950. This compilation has been published under the title Ramana Answers Self-Enquiry 1900 to 1950 by our founder, President Sri A.R. Natarajan. After contemplating on this week's question and answer and meditating upon it by His abundant grace, we will have a 20 minutes Atma Vichara session. Following that, today Nandakumar ji, filling in for Akka, would be contemplating on self-enquiry, and then finally we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. We have been looking at the question and answers put to Bhagavan between 1936 to 1950, and in a series of questions, a devotee is asking Bhagavan about happiness, and is it beyond the grasp of the intellect how to acquire happiness, and is it in the final sort of a question he is asking us. The 85th question is, then is it not natural to desire for happiness? Because for earlier questions, he has put many questions to Bhagavan on happiness and how it is to be acquired. So Bhagavan had very clearly told him that the happiness is natural to the self, and the misery is only due to the association with the non-self. So he is asking, then is it not natural to desire for happiness? And Bhagavan is giving a solid proof why we desire and why it is natural to desire for the happiness. And Bhagavan continues to then clearly explain that because it is so natural, what is it causes, what is it that we do, which or what is that we need to do to get rid of the misery that we are facing. So we will look at that Bhagavan's answer in this week's question and answer. The devotee asks, then is it not natural to desire? Bhagavan says, the desire for happiness is a proof of the ever existing happiness of the self. Otherwise, how can desire for it arise in you? If headache was natural to human beings, no one would try to get rid of it. But everyone that has a headache tries to get rid of it because he knows he has known a time when he had no headache. This is very important for us to register. I read this once again. The desire for happiness is a proof of the ever existing happiness of the self. Otherwise, how can desire for it arise in you? If headache was natural to human being, no one would try to get rid of it. But everyone that has a headache tries to get rid of it because he has known a time when he had no headache. He desires only that which is natural to him. So too, he desires happiness because happiness is natural to him. In this way, Bhagavan has very clearly answered that the desiring for the self or the desiring for the happiness, the self is synonymous to happiness, is very natural because that is our natural state. Further, Bhagavan explains, being natural, it is not acquired. Very important for us to know. We, as sadhakas, strive a lot for it to be acquired. But here Bhagavan is bringing some clarity. Being natural, it is not acquired. Man's attempt can only be man's attempt can only be to get rid of misery. Very important. Being natural, the happiness being natural, it is not acquired. Man's effort attempts can only be to get rid of misery. Further, Bhagavan says, if that be done, the ever present bliss is felt. The primal bliss is obscured by the non self, which is synonymous with non bliss or misery. Happiness mixed with misery is only misery. When misery is eliminated, then the ever present bliss is said to be gained. Pleasure, which ends in pain, is misery. Man wants to eschew such pleasure. The reason for the pleasure of these states is that one thought excludes all others, and then this single thought also merges into the self. In deep sleep, all thoughts disappear, and it is the state of nescience, but it is one of bliss. Here, Bhagavan very beautifully explains what is natural happiness, why we strive for the natural happiness. Because if it is unnatural, if there was a time where we had not experienced that natural happiness, we wouldn't have a slightest of the idea. Like he gives an example of the headache. There was a time where we know, or there has been a lot of time where we have experienced a state where there is no headache for us. Therefore, when headaches prompts up, we feel it is unnatural, it is not convenient, and we try to get rid of it. Likewise, that we are very much aware of a state of a natural happiness in us. And therefore, when that natural happiness is missing, which primarily we face in the waking state, we find that the natural happiness is not there. Or more to say, if we take this waking and the dream, whenever the mind rises and runs outwardly, we find that the happiness is missing. We don't see that in the state of sleep where there is no mind and therefore there is no object to grasp. So Bhagavan is going on, is trying to give the clarity that the happiness, therefore, we should have experienced a long time because it is our natural state. And therefore, in this waking state, or whenever in the state when the mind has arisen, whether it is in the waking or in the dream, and it is taking us away from the happiness, taking us towards the misery, we feel that we want to get rid of it. We want to get back to that natural state. And therefore, we desire for happiness. So we will, Bhagavan further takes us, being natural, it is not acquired. Because it is natural, it is not something that we need to strive to achieve. Only thing, whatever is making it be obscured, we need to get rid of it. And that is all the man's effort is. Man's attempt, that means all of our sadhana here, is only to get rid of something that we have put, or something which is obscuring us from experiencing the natural happiness that we have. So, in the first part, Bhagavan has very clearly said that natural happiness is our natural state, and therefore, and whenever there is lack of happiness, then we will only look for happiness because that is our natural state. And he has given the example of the headache and the absence of headache as our natural state. So when we get the headache, it is natural for us to strive for the state where there is no headache. And in the second part, he has said very clearly that it is not something that we need to acquire. What all that we need to do, if there is anything a man has to do as an effort, that means when I have arisen in the waking state as this entity, all that I need to do is to get rid of the misery. Now, what is that misery? How is that misery appears if we were to contemplate, which Vidyaranya in the Anubhuti Prakasha very beautifully inquires into it. So I will try to put that forth here. He says that all our effort is basically to gain happiness, and therefore we look for the means to gain that happiness. So even when we come to sadhana, we want the happiness, and we are seeking a means to achieve that. Like for an example, if getting an admission for my child in the school that I deserve makes me feel that he will get the best education, and therefore it makes me feel happy, then the means for me to acquire that is maybe to stand in a long queue from morning to evening, or whatever that is to be done. But when we do that, then we are ready to do that to acquire that happiness. But when we are standing in the queue to get the application, we are obviously not very happy doing that. Even the means needs to be effortless for us. Therefore, even then, we will be trying to see if we were, for example, called by our name and said, please come and take the application for some weird reason. Let us say somebody influenced the school there and asked them to call my name and give the application. We feel very happy now that whole 6 hours or 8 hours of effort that we need to put is no more required. And the final goal, what I was desiring, which will give me happiness, is achieved. And therefore, I experience the happiness. So he takes us to that moment of the happiness when we achieve. And Vidyaranya very beautifully says, the buddhi, the intellect, which was outward turned, looking for certain things, certain things it was desiring. It was holding on to some entity, and it was desiring for that entity. That buddhi, when that entity is acquired, it has no more further objective. Therefore, it sinks into the self. That intellect sinks into the self. And he says that whenever everything, intellect, the mind, everything, when it sinks into the self, and there is nothing grasped. Obviously, after the school um, admission is acquired, I may have something else to grasp. If for a moment when the intellect has synced into the self and it is not grasping anything else, then we experience the happiness, which is nothing but the state of the self. And how does Bhagavan bring this about to us? He says that look at the gap between two thoughts. When a thought has arisen, obviously we are grasping it, we are contemplating on it, we are given it a reality. Let us say that sinks in for whatever reason, when it gets absorbed back into the self, before the next thought is grasped, the gap in between that, there where there is no object, which is what we see in the deep sleep. In the deep sleep also there is no object, there is no mind. So in that gap, the happiness is experienced. Or when the desire for the school application is achieved and the mind or the intellect has nothing else to grasp, then the happiness is experienced. So he brings us to this recognition to all of us. And Bhagavan and Vidyaranya makes us recognize now the grasping, and after grasping, continuously moving from one objective to another object. That, if it can be consciously relieved, then we will be always experiencing a state of happiness, which is what Bhagavan is saying here. Man's attempt can only be to get rid of misery. Now we need to understand this. Every time we think that I need to get this happiness from an object outside, and after achieving that objective, I have to make my mind subside and I don't have to grasp a new objective. That is when, if I see that I experience happiness, then this is like in Sharabi, they say, Nasha Sharab mein hota to nachti botal. The real nasha was in the sharab, the bottle should have also danced. But it is only us. So we think that that gives us happiness. This outward going, or our attempt to see or experience happiness only from object and grasping of object, is what puts us in this misery, because we forget that we are naturally happy and we give lot of reality to an object. And not only that, now having given that reality to that object, we pursue the means also. And the means also, as in waiting for the queue for the application, is also not happiness for us. So this is how we indulge in misery. And this is what we need to get rid of. Bhagavan says, whatever is in the outward thing, what is to happen will happen. In his Upadesham to his mother, is very beautifully saying that what is to happen will happen, what is not to happen will not happen. Therefore, be silent. That is to remain in one's own natural state without grasping any object. That is the way. That is the way of getting rid of the misery. And that is all the human effort can be, says Bhagavan. That is all the sadhana can be. When we do that, the natural happiness is experienced even in the state of waking. This we need to consciously understand. And therefore, Bhagavan says, bring the waking sleep. Like in sleep, there is no mind, no objects to grasp. In the state of waking, sleep to all of this. What is to happen will happen. What is not to happen will not happen. Therefore, sleep to it and experience the natural happiness, says Bhagavan. We will look at the remaining part of the Isupadesham in the next week. Therefore, how does Bhagavan bring this to us? He says, no matter how many thoughts rise, because it is all objective. And whatever may be the nature of the thought, good, bad, ugly, or even spiritual, inquire to whom is this? The answer would be, it is for me. Thereupon, inquire, who am I? And bring the mind which was outward turned, grasping things objectively, back to this source. Like it is exactly like sinking of the intellect into the self. The mind which was outward going through the inquiry is made to sink back in the self. And when it does so, we experience the self itself. Therefore, the question, who am I, need not be an answer. It needs to be a pursuit of what do I refer to as I, or where from these thoughts, including the thoughts, is rising. When we pursue it that way, when we inquire it that way, we find that the mind actually subsides in the self. And Bhagavan says, with repeated practice, the mind will gain enough strength to remain at the source. Or we clearly understand that the outward going mind, or pursuing of things outwardly, is the way to misery. So, the abundant grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most direct path. For the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichara. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Over to Nandakumar ji.
Namo Ramana. For these 20 minutes, I thought I will read from the work Mahayoga. We have been reading from this work in the morning satsangs, and some of you who are participating there may find that we are going through the topic again. But I think for the benefit of others, I thought I will go through this once over. I am reading from the chapter The Quest, that is on the practice of self-enquiry. This work itself is an end result of about 4 years of tapas that Lakshman Sharma ji does with Bhagwan. He finds that there is an existing work on a commentary on the Ulladu Narpadu, which he feels leaves something to be desired. And he questions Bhagwan as to why Bhagwan is not making any corrections or bringing to the public that that work is not all right. Bhagwan says that he is not to contradict any comment, but if he can and feels that he can bring about a better version, he should try. And he doesn't know Tamil that much. Bhagwan literally teaches him Tamil and makes him go through the penance of 4 years of understanding Ulladu Narpadu. And this particular chapter is on the practice itself, very well understood by Lakshman Sharma ji from the words of Bhagwan himself. The quest. A clear summary of the preceding chapters, together with an introduction to this one, is given by the sage in the following. So the writer is summarizing all of the book, the preceding chapters, from Bhagwan's one verse. This is Ulladu Narpadu, verse 27. Where the ego rises not, there we are that. Nandakumar says that this one line encapsulates the whole of Vedanta. She highlights this sentence and remarks so in her comments on Ulladu Narpadu. நான் உதியாது உள்ள நிலை, நாம் அதுவாய் உள்ள நிலை. This is a great inheritance given by our spiritual father to all his sons, all his children, sons and daughters. This spiritual inheritance we should understand and claim as our own, given by Bhagavan. What he says is that all the tussles we have about karma, he did this, he did that, we should not have done that, we should do this. Should we take revenge? Should we not? Will we have a final judgment after death? Should we control all our anger? All these areas are handled by one line. Nan udiyadu ulla nilai. When the I does not arise, none of these areas we get entangled in. All these areas arise with very great complexity, they will be described. And that is the treasure Bhagavan is giving, that we can transcend all that areas with just one sentence properly internalized. Nanudiyadulla nilai. Which pilgrimage center to go? Bhagavan says in Ulladu Narpadu verse 8, he says, எப்பெயரிட்டு எவ்வுருவில் ஏத்தினும் அப்பேருருவில் அப்பொருளை காண்வழியது. Says that so far as we are with the name and form, it is not only impossible to do worship of the formless God, but it is very beneficial to do the worship of God with form. That is a path, that is a way to know the unknowable. But then, and we can see that in the Nama and Rupa, எப்பெயரிட்டு எவ்வுருவில் ஏத்தினும். So, பெயர் is Nama, Uru is Rupa. We saw that the whole area of karma is transcended by Nanudiyadulla nilai. The whole area of what prayer, what bhakti sadhana, which pilgrimage center to go, which are the mantras or deities to take up. All these are given to us as treasure in this one sentence. We understand that when we worship God as a form, then all the pilgrimage centers arise before us. Where to book the tickets, what time, whether we will go there or not. And even when we go there, Bhagavan says the Nama worship has to be continued. Without the Nama worship, the Rupa worship remains at some level, because the Nama or the thoughts may carry you elsewhere. Unless one goes deep in the Rupa worship, where the physicality of things, the sensory part of things, Rupa is gone, and one imbibes that Rupa as a mental form. There too, the sensory search in various pilgrimage centers is given to us as the Rupa imbibed as a mental form. So Nama and Rupa, we understand that is why it is called Smaranad Arunachali. Wherever your body is, irrespective of the space where it is placed, if you think of Arunachala to the exclusion of all other thoughts, that is the best darshanam you can have. That is. But Bhagavan says, it is only a way to see the nameless and formless. Really speaking, மெய்ப்பொருளின் உண்மையில் தன் உண்மையினை ஓர்ந்து ஒடுங்கி ஒன்றுதலே உண்மையில் காணல். In the pre-existing truth of the self, to search for one's own truth and find both to be identical and be one with that is real darshanam, is real seeing of God. And all that is contained in this Nanudiyadulla nilai. In Nanudiyadulla nilai, all the pilgrimage centers, all the divine personalities, all the divine mantras are now brought to one place, the source of the I, with which we are going to do the other searches. Nanudiyadulla nilai is not only the treasure that answers all questions of complex karmas, it is also the treasure of inheritance given to us to remove all doubts about the bhakti marga sadhanas that we may be doing, that all the pilgrimage centers are right here from where the I thought arises. And where it does not arise, Nam Aduvai Ulla Nilai. When the ego does not arise, Nanudiyad Ulla Nilai, Nam Aduvai Ulla Nilai. The answer, the treasure which answers to all the complex karmas, the treasure that answers to all the questions related to pilgrimage places, japa and dhyana, the answer that completely takes us to the end point of yoga. That's why it is called as Mahayoga. That is so near, it is brought so near. Bhagavan says Upadesha means what we feel is thousands of kilometers away, separated from us by so much of time that it is going to take many more janmas. The great Guru, he brings it so near. He says that it is the very place from where your I thought arises. So the inheritance given to us, this great treasure given to us, is the treasure that is the end point of karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana margas. That is in one half sentence. Nanudiyadu ulla nilai. Nam aduvai ulla nilai. That is the verily the place where the word that the natural happiness which Dileep ji was talking about. You are that happiness. There is no more seeking of happiness apart from your very self. You are that happiness. You are the happiness that is aware of itself. You are the happiness that is aware of itself at all time and all places eternally. In fact, that awareness of oneself, one's existence, itself is the Ananda, itself is the Chit, the consciousness. Sat itself is consciousness, Sat itself is Ananda. For that, what is the sadhana? Nanudikkum sthanamade nadu. So, this is the ultimate spot where all the treasures of all the karmas we have ever done lies. All the bhakti margas begin and end here. All the yogas are completed in this Mahayoga. All the jnana vicharas, the nididhyasanas of various statements, all end at the source of the I thought. What is the sadhana then? Nanudikkum sthanamade nadamal. Without seeking the source from where the I thought arises, Nanudiya Tannilappai Sarvadevan. For the I thought to not arise impulsively, it has to be annihilated at its source. Tannilappai Saravendam. Unless you seek the source from where the I thought arises, how are you going to end the I thought? Because where the I thought is annihilated, there the karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana, they are all completed. But for that, the sadhana is with one-pointedness, ask, who am I? Or seek with devotion, whence am I? Till the I thought is annihilated. Who am I is called as jnana marga in enquiry. Whence am I is called as devotion in self-enquiry. But either way, nanudikkum sthanamade nadu. And without seeking that in who am I or whence am I, without seeking the source from where I thought arises, how are you going to annihilate the I thought? And without annihilating the I thought, how are you going to abide? Nanudiya Tannilappai Sarvadevan Saramal Tan Aduvam Tannilayil Nirpadevan. What is Tannilai? Where the non does not arise, and one naturally is with one with that porul. நானுதியாதுள்ள நிலை, நாம் வஸ்துவாய் அதுவாய் உள்ள நிலை. And how can you go to that place without referring to how impulsively the ego is rising? Everything else arises from this root impulse. All other vasanas rise and push you outward after the root impulse of I thought arises. So whenever an object arises, objective knowledge arises, thought arises, one has to diligently inquire, for whom is this thought? Who am I? Or directly hold, from where does this I thought rise? One of the things that Lakshman Sharma ji brings out very nicely, which I wanted to read for you and which we have benefited in the morning readings, is how the holding of I am, it cuts the vicious circle of waking, dream and deep sleep. That is an analysis that is unique to this book, but it is experienceable. You will correlate with that when you start doing Atma Vicharam. Neither in the ordinary waking, when the mind wanders from thought to thought, nor in sleep, when even the basic consciousness of I am is submerged. Neither in these two states, waking where you are running after the thoughts, mind is wandering after thought to thought, and in sleep, when you don't even have the awareness of I am, neither by being in these two states can the vicious circle be addressed or cut. But for an instant of time, for that instant of time you are doing who am I? A thought arises, you let it go. For whom is this thought? Who am I? For an instant of time, in the passage of mind from the vagrancy of waking to the utter stillness of sleep. What are we doing in who am I? We are moving from the vagrancy of waking to the utter stillness of sleep. We would have gone with the vagrancy of waking if we had followed that thought. But without following that thought, when we let it go and ask for whom is this? This for me, who am I? We move from the vagrancy of waking, vagrancy of running after thoughts, to the stillness of sleep here itself. That is what Dileep ji was saying, waking sleep. It is bringing the sleep here is nothing but stilling the I thought with who am I. When we do that, what it happens, Lakshman Sharma ji says that from the vagrancy of waking to the utter stillness of sleep, the consciousness attains its purity as the formless I am. What happens at that point when you are holding the attention of the stillness of the I? It is absolutely pure. The attention is absolutely pure without depending on any other thing. By the force of the resolve in this quest, the consciousness is reduced to and kept steadily in this formless state. So without allowing thoughts to rise, this I am is held in Summayiru, in being still. Just be still. Use the Bhava Bala, but only to hold the pure I am. That is actually cutting the three states of waking, dream and deep sleep. By the force of the resolve in this quest, the consciousness is reduced to or focused on and kept steadily in this I am. Only the Sadbhava, that I am, is held. And by this, by the steady holding of that laser of I am, the vicious circle of waking, dream and deep sleep is cut asunder, and the egoless state is brought here and Now, in fact, here and now is not there. Only the egoless state is there. The nanudiya dulla nilai, the effortlessly non-rising of the I, where thou art that, where you yourself are the self, is realized by this holding of this laser of pure I am. When thought arises, don't go to the vagrancy of the waking state by following thought, but bring the stillness of sleep consciously by holding the I am, who am I. Then, without allowing thoughts to arise, use the Bhavabala to hold only the I am. Now, that pure I am is your own formless nature, but it is full of energy. It is full of Atma Bhala, and that is cutting through the triad of the waking, dream, deep sleep, which three cannot exist without the seer seeing seen. The seer seeing seen is seen as the waking, dream, deep sleep. That is cut when this laser of pure I am is held, and there the ego is removed, and the egoless state, the Atma, rises and shines in all its glory, says Lakshman Sharmaji. So I thought I will read this for the benefit of the group. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana, sir. Apara Satchit Sukhavarirashi Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hृदि चिन्तयामि चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि. Namo Ramana. Thank you, Nandakumar sir. Thank you all.